WWE may have just stolen TNA's next rising star, and honestly, we got to start having a conversation about this partnership and whether or not it's actually beneficial to the WWE. Quite frankly, WWE is making all the stops to make this happen, and we're going to talk about it, so make sure you click subscribe for more. Now, we have actually seen for the last few months that there's been plenty of reports coming out that essentially mean WWE would not be recruiting talent from TNA, AEW, or New Japan. But then it's really interesting because immediately after that, we've actually come to find out that WWE is reportedly interested in a whole bunch of talent from WWE's competitors. We were hearing stories of WWE being interested in Powerhouse Hobbs. We're hearing stories of WWE being interested in plenty of talent from New Japan as well as TNA. But the one that really strikes me as a problem is Leon Slater. Now, there's this new report that came out from PW Insider Elite that basically has come out and revealed that WWE is interested in using Leon Slater for their UK tour. Now, a recent development from TNA has really made me dumbfounded and puzzled, and this is actually really just due to the fact that TNA is no longer advertising Leon Slater's X Division Championship match for TNA on AMC. So, is that because WWE is getting their wish granted? Now, I love what WWE and TNA have done with their partnership. I mean, it really has led to some great things for TNA, including the television deal. They're setting attendance records. They're getting this new TV deal, which, guys, let's be real, it is far greater than being on Access TV. So why are we in a situation where I'm starting to feel a little sour on this partnership? Well, the thing is, if you're going to do a talent exchange, I'm completely fine with that. But this new report with WWE wanting to utilize Leon Slater for something like the UK tour when they have their most important episode of television, probably in the last 10 to 15 years, you really have to use their champion? Is that really what we're dealing with here? Is that the situation that WWE is now forcing TNA into? Because that's what it kind of feels like. Now, WWE's in Europe. We know Raw next week is going to be in Belfast. We know WWE is primarily using Leon Slater for pretty much everything. I mean, he just had a championship match with Obafemi 2 weeks ago for the NXT championship. He did not win that match, but he was in the main event. And, of course, Obafemi vacated the belt right after. And then you have to wonder, hey, Leon Slater was being used for John Cena's final match for Saturday night's main event. There's something about this that just feels very, very wrong. Quite frankly, something just feels very wrong about it. And I'm not a fan of it. I'm okay with a talent exchange. But I'm not okay with WWE just picking out everybody from TNA that they want. Because Leon Slater is a young, gifted, up-and-coming rising star who, to be frank, could have gone to AEW or WWE, but he chose TNA. And now it just seems like WWE is inevitably rolling out the red carpet for him in hopes that they will eventually bring him in. Javon Evans is on WWE Raw. Who's to say WWE doesn't immediately sign Leon Slater when given the opportunity and throws him in a tag team with Javon Evans on WWE Raw? For some people, that may seem unrealistic, but I do think that is a very realistic approach that they very well could end up going with. Deep down inside, when I see WWE doing this whole thing with Leon Slater, asking for him for the UK tour, when I see him on Saturday night's main event, I immediately come to the conclusion that WWE wants him. We have seen this played out before with Joe Hendry and Jordan Grace, and it is apparent to me that WWE is using TNA in this manner. Now, I don't know if Triple H and the WWE executives feel like they're owed this kind of thing, because obviously WWE's influence has tremendously benefited TNA. But I'm also kind of disappointed in the executives with TNA as well. You should have a little bit of more confidence in your roster and your television product to not solely rely on WWE. So where I question the partnership lies is when I watch NXT this week. Because I watch NXT and I see Stacks defending the TNA International Championship against a guy like Shiloh Hill, who's a new guy. And I'm not a fan of TNA's belt being utilized as a prop for this match. The TNA International Championship was held by Steve Macklin. Like, this is a guy who should be the world champion in TNA. So when you hear of names like Leon Slater and Mike Santana potentially coming to WWE, my immediate reaction to that is actually kind of negative. And I just feel as if maybe this partnership is starting to get a little bit more wonky. I don't believe that WWE is trying to buy TNA, but I definitely believe that WWE is utilizing TNA's talent in areas where it makes a lot of sense for them business-wise. But it just feels wrong. And quite frankly, it's not a fun feeling. Speaking of TNA, we should probably have a conversation about the Rascals, because honestly, at any point in time, they could show up anywhere, right? So there's actually a new report that's come out about the Rascals, and it's basically confirmed that the Rascals are no longer under contract with TNA. Now, Desmond Xavier, formerly known as Wesley from WWE, never actually signed a contract with TNA, but he was working for the company on a per-appearance deal. Now, what actually really became strange is the fact that Desmond Xavier, Trey Miguel, Zachary Wentz, and Myron Reed are now all officially out of the contract with TNA. And what's actually really interesting is that it appears that the Rascals are apparently headed to AEW. Now, I think this is a very fair observation when you watch pro wrestling and you see these guys. If they're not re-signing with TNA and Desmond Xavier left WWE, he got released, I think it's very obvious that AEW is the clear option. Now, Ibu from Self-Made PW, he's come out and he says, hey, I can vouch for this. I'm very confident that the Rascals are heading to AEW. Quite frankly, it's January 14th, Wednesday. And you know what that means. Tonight is Dynamite, and I would fully expect the Rascals to show up. I would fully expect the Rascals to show up. Now, I do not believe for 1 second that the Rascals cannot show up unless it's all four. All four have to be together. Myron Reed, Zachary Wentz, Desmond Xavier, Trey Miguel, they all need to be AEW bound. Now, we spoke about WWE stealing TNA talent, but maybe this is a point in time where we should also have a conversation about the AEW fan base, because I think the AEW fan base should probably start to take TNA a little serious, considering all of the TNA talent they have been able to sign in the past 2 years. We have seen Speedball Mike Bailey, Josh Alexander, now Jake something is in the company, Jake Doyle. So it's not only WWE talent, it's not only WWE taking TNA's talent, but we should have that conversation about AEW taking TNA's talent as well. Now, quite frankly, the Rascals will be great in AEW. I have a lot of confidence in that. I really do. I don't know where they fit on the card, but they're going to be a fun act. And thankfully, all four of those performers are not only great in-ring workers, but they are very charismatic. And I think that is going to be something that is actually of benefit to AEW. We talk about storytellers. We talk about storytelling. These guys are very interesting stars. They have a lot of fun stuff that they're able to do from a character perspective. And I think, naturally speaking, AEW will see the benefit from that, and talent will love that. But I do think when we look at the situation with the Rascals leaving TNA, I kind of get a little upset with TNA again. I don't know if there's a concentrated effort from TNA to retain talent. And I love TNA and I love the product. And there are some people who are re-signing with the company, which is fantastic. But at the same time, too, how can we not have a conversation about the Rascals, who basically became a name in professional wrestling because of their work in TNA? Yes, we are aware of some of the things they've done in Pro Wrestling Revolver. We saw what MSK did in NXT. But I think for the most part, a lot of people are aware of them because of the work they did in TNA. And if TNA loses concentration on retaining talent like the Rascals, which I feel like they're a very big part of the show, it worries me for other talent. It worries me for the situation like Leon Slater. It worries me for Mike Santana. They weren't able to figure it out with Jake something, and they couldn't figure it out with the Rascals. I just kind of feel dumbfounded. And I genuinely believe with all my heart the Rascals will be fine in AEW. This is not a matter of, I just don't think it's going to work out for them. Because I do think it will work out for them. I think they will find some sort of success there. But my issue doesn't even reflect on AEW. It reflects on TNA. And as a fan of TNA, I have to call it out where necessary. And that's exactly where we are with this situation. I genuinely feel in my heart that re-signing with TNA would have been a better thing, because TNA should have been able to say, listen, we got this new TV deal. We're going to pay you guys pretty well. We're going to have some big plans. But I don't think it works like that. And I'm sure there's a lot of things I don't know here. But one thing I do know is that it would have been nice to see TNA re-sign the Rascals. So it appears they are leaving TNA, and it looks like they will be headed to AEW. I wouldn't be surprised if they showed up tonight. I had been telling people for a while I would expect them to go to AEW, and there's no sources on that, for example. It was just something I personally felt in my heart. It just seemed like it naturally would happen because we start to see TNA and the way they've maybe declined in re-signing talent. But definitely a frustrating situation. Very, 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 very just odd. Very odd situation, truthfully. I mean, that's just the way. There's no way to, no cookie cutter bullshit here, man. There's no way to put it. There's no other way to put it. It should have been the Rascals in TNA. And yeah. Now we're in a point in time where we're gonna see what TNA misses out on, and what AEW does with them. Switching gears to WWE, it appears that there's new plans for WrestleMania 42. Now, you may have seen the report from Dave Meltzer that came out that WWE is no longer discussing Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes in the main event of WrestleMania, which I would like to say, thank you, wrestling gods, because we don't really need that match. Now, with that being said, Ibu from Selfmade PW has come out with a new report suggesting that WWE has brought up the possibility of doing Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky as a main event for one of the nights at WrestleMania 42 in Vegas. Ibu says, I want to say this clearly. They've discussed it, and they mentioned that Io versus Rhea is something that they view as a main event level, but there are no guarantees that they're actually going to do it. So it is still up in the air. As of now, they don't know what the women's world title match is going to be, for the record. And quite frankly, Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky is the match that does make sense. Yes, they are the women tag team champions, and yes, it is a complete overact. But I think the idea of Rhea Ripley turning heel going up against Io Sky would be a tremendous idea. These two women are arguably the two best wrestlers in WWE, regardless of gender. I think you can make a very, very strong case that Rhea Ripley is extremely over, and you can make it a very strong case that Io Sky is extremely over. And let's just be real, Io Sky is one of the best performers in professional wrestling altogether. And this is a match that is definitely main event WrestleMania caliber. Now, you need a very strong story going into this. It should not be a situation where Rhea Ripley and Io Sky win the Royal Rumble. So whoever wins the Women's Royal Rumble, I'm going to say now, should probably go up against the Women's World Champion on SmackDown, which at this point in time, at this time of recording, it's Jade Cargill. So if I'm the WWE, how do we set up Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky? I think that's a tremendous question. Well, I think you got to have one of them win the World Championship. At some point, somebody's got to beat Stephanie Vakir or Raquel Rodriguez. I think you could actually do a short reign with Raquel. We have this storyline playing out with Stephanie Vakir being injured. I would have her defend the belt against Raquel Rodriguez, have Raquel win the belt and hold it all the way until Elimination Chamber, in which she has to defend it in the chamber. And maybe this is where fantasy booking could kind of become a complicated issue because you're kind of playing hot potato, but you can have at Elimination Chamber where Raquel defends it inside the chamber and loses to Rhea Ripley or Io Sky. You could protect Raquel with that booking. Rhea or Io could win the belt. And then the following night on Monday Night Raw, you can have Rhea turn on Io or Io turn on Rhea. But I think both are great, whether heel or babyface. I just think Io Sky is like, she should be babyface. She should be the Rey Mysterio for the women's wrestling title scene. Like, she shouldn't be a heel at all. And I think you're going to see a lot of success with her as a babyface. But I find this to be a fascinating story because honestly, I don't really know what we're getting with WrestleMania this year. I am excited to see what they do with WrestleMania this year, but I feel like every year we're talking about Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, The Rock, Cody Rhodes. So obviously, it's really hard to imagine what these main events can be because I feel like all the main events so far typically involve the same names every year. I think it's important for WWE to do something different for WrestleMania this year. I don't feel like WWE has had one massive story this entire year that would allow them to really main event WrestleMania over other matches. Drew McIntyre is the WWE champion now, and if he were to hold it until WrestleMania, would he be in the main event of WrestleMania? Would WWE put that over Rhea versus Io? I could make the argument that WWE would probably let the women main event. Now, if Drew McIntyre was in this year-long story as WWE champion and they were going to have him drop the belt at WrestleMania, maybe that's a whole different thing, but he just won the belt. So I like the idea of Rhea versus Io. I like the idea of WWE doing something different. But they will have a challenge on how to get there, because I even think there's flaws with my fantasy booking too. But I think you have to figure out a logical way to get the belt off Stephanie Vicure. They're doing this whole injury angle. I guess that's one way to do it. And then if you do give the belt to Raquel Rodriguez, who it looks like they're trying to push, you got to protect her for when she drops the belt. So I think these are all things that you just have to kind of be cognizant of. You have to be aware of these things. I think WWE naturally is aware of it, but we will see what they do. And who knows? Ibu is just saying it's been mentioned. So we don't even know if this is confirmed. But I think it is safe to say that WWE probably has discussed this. I think WWE knows if they want a women's match to main event right now, based on who's on TV right now, that's the match that makes sense. And whenever Bianca Belair is ready to return, hopefully by the Rumble, I think you can make an argument for Bianca Belair to maybe be another main event caliber match. But right now, she's not on TV, and right now they have no build to that. So it's important that they get the momentum there. Are we looking at the end of WWE Evolve as we know it? Because in case you guys missed it on NXT, we saw the Vanity Project from Evolve called up to NXT, as well as Keanu Carver. Now, both are entirely different situations because the Vanity Project is a team in Evolve, which I don't know what WWE sees in Jackson Drake and these guys. I think Brad Baylor kind of reminds me of a young Miz. But these guys were called up to NXT, and WWE is apparently high up on them, and it was pretty clear ever since Evolve became a thing. But now we're starting to see some more talent called up. The Vanity Project, Shawn Legacy, Eli Knight, which, by the way, they got to do a name change there. Eli Knight, LA Knight, I don't know, it's a little too close. But they're all called up. But I actually think the most impressive call-up that we saw from Evolve was Keanu Carter, because Ava opened up the show addressing the vacant championship belt. WWE announced a ladder match on February 3rd, 6-man ladder match. I love these ladder matches. You will never hear me complain about these ladder matches. Ricky Saints will be in it. They're doing qualifying matches next week, but Keanu Carver comes out and basically attacks everybody. And they just gave him such a strong showing. And it is very clear that WWE sees something in Keanu Carver, which, by the way, maybe you guys remember when he was on Twitter and he was trashing the Samoans in WWE. A lot of people thought maybe he would get fired from that. He never got fired from that. And in fact, WWE is now pushing him in a monstrous way. But of course, Keanu Carver comes out and clears pretty much everybody. And they made a big statement. And of course, with WWE Evolve, I mean, these are a lot of talents that I think overall has just been a very positive for WWE. I mean, it goes to show you that WWE has talent in the pipeline. But when you see this sort of thing, you just have to wonder what's the future for Evolve. You have to wonder what's WWE's plan for the show moving forward. Now, we know that WWE is reportedly planning more dates for NXT to get out of the Performance Center this year, which I think is a good thing. But I do think we should have that conversation about Evolve, because the way that Evolve is filmed is just strange. I would like to see Evolve take the NXT approach, because it is in the Performance Center, but it's not actually in front of a real live crowd. I think you need to put Evolve in the Performance Center in front of fans. Put NXT in these smaller venues. We've seen AEW do it. AEW is doing small venues where it's 1,000 to 2,000 people. NXT can easily do that. They could even do more depending on the markets that they go to. I don't want to see WWE give up on Evolve, but these Evolve call-ups to NXT are interesting to me, because now we're going to see what happens with some of these talent and whether or not they can get over. Like the Vanity Project, to me, is not a group that's going to get over. This is not a group that I ever see leaving the Performance Center. I'm sorry, I just don't see it happening. It's like what I've said about Dark State several times. Like, okay, it's going to work in NXT. It would never transition well to the main roster. So I think if WWE was smart, you put those Evolve guys in NXT, see what works, see what doesn't work. Keanu Carver clearly is somebody who's over. You're definitely going to see more of Keanu Carver. You'll probably see him in the ladder match, which I think would be a great way of introducing new talent. I don't think he should win the NXT championship, but I think he should be looking good, you know? And the cool thing about a 6-man ladder match, by the way, I think we all kind of know this, is the fact that you can protect people because there's no pinfalls, you know, nobody truly loses. There's just a very interesting dynamic there. And then one thing that you have to consider too is like Elio LaFleur is debuting next week in a North American Championship match against Ethan Page. So that might be Ethan Page's last match in NXT. They shouldn't give him the world championship. They should move him up to the main roster. So you're looking at all these moves on NXT, and then it kind of makes you wonder. It kind of makes you think a little bit about NXT and where it is. NXT is very, very healthy. I don't know if the same could be said for Evolve. And I think for Evolve on Tubi, we don't really know the viewership numbers, but I would have to assume it's not on the high side because this is a very, very niche product. So I think the call-ups are good, despite the fact that I don't necessarily like all the talent being called up. I think the call-ups are a good thing. We're going to see what works, what doesn't. But yeah, this could be very well the end of Evolve. I wouldn't be shocked if Evolve eventually fizzles out within the year, honestly. I know they have this TV deal with Tubi. We'll see how that's all contractually done. We don't know too many details on that deal. And obviously Fox owns Tubi. Maybe WWE wants to keep the door open between them and Fox, so this is a way of doing that. But I just feel like Evolve has to make some changes, and this is kind of this is like the first red flag that I'm seeing that kind of makes me wonder where the future lands with the Evolve brand. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our final topic of today's video, which, by the way, WWE is doing a tryout in Orlando, and you know WWE largely goes after college athletes, but this time they've decided to do some things different. Thank you to Wrestling Observer Newsletter and What Culture for the list. Starboy Charlie, who's an independent wrestling standout. You may have seen him in GCW. He's on the list. Leon Lacombo, who's an independent wrestler. Jack Pasquale, Manny Lowe. Jeremiah Lakwani, who's actually a social media influencer, is also part of the tryout, which, by the way, WWE is still going after the influencers. They're still going after the collegiate athletes, but it looks like they're still going after indie wrestlers, which is a good thing. Blade Brown, Ben Finsif, Jeriel Rivera, it might be pronounced Yeriel, Bhupinder Gujar. My gosh, I apologize to this man for butchering his name because I just want to say one thing. If you know who this is, he worked for TNA Impact, he worked for BCW, and he's working for Scott D'Amore's Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. This guy, I have met him personally, and I just want to say, when you meet somebody who's a very nice guy, very, very, very nice guy, sometimes you just want to see them win. I think so highly of Bhupinder Gujar. I would just love to see that he signs with WWE NXT because honestly, he's a fun wrestler to watch, but he's just such a nice human being. My experience with him was just so positive. Definitely excited to see him potentially go to WWE. Tyler Jordan, who's another independent wrestler. James Karnick, who's a basketball player. Manny House, who's an independent wrestler. Bruce Hamilton, who's an independent wrestler who won the 2025 America's Strongest Marine competition. That's an interesting tactic for recruiting. For the women, we have Nor Phoenix Diana. You guys might know who she is. I recently found out about her probably in the past year. She is actually she's got some serious potential. And I know she lost her match to Mercedes Moné, but that's okay. That kind of happened when Mercedes was becoming the belt collector. Ellie Finch, who's from track and field at Michigan State. Go Spartans. KJ Johnson, a regional champion in gymnastics. Regina Terran, an MMA fighter. Casey Schaff, who is a basketball, lacrosse and cross-country athlete. Sally Grace, who is a social media sports influencer. And Alyssa Danielle, who is a vlogger and snowboarder. So You have a very, very big list here of talent who are coming into a tryout with WWE. And obviously, WWE is not going to sign everybody. But I do love the idea that WWE here is recruiting indie wrestlers again. I love WWE's strategy. To be honest with you, I have criticized WWE for only going after indie talent. And I've criticized them as well for only going after collegiate athletes or influencers. You have to go after everybody. Okay? You have a men's roster right now that needs a little bit of help. There's no reason whatsoever that you don't look at indie wrestling. You can develop an indie wrestler the same way that you develop a collegiate athlete. And I think some people will make the argument, well, if it's a collegiate athlete, we train them right away on the good, right? And if you're an indie wrestler, you might have a lot of things that you've learned that are bad. No, you can get people to the WWE way of doing things. That's okay. That's up to the coaches and the performance center, but we know that WWE doesn't have this problem. In fact, I think it's actually a little bit more riskier. There's pros and cons, but if you sign an indie wrestler, some people have the dream of coming to WWE, and then some people also have the dream of like, hey, I'm just trying to make a living, right? With indie wrestlers, if they don't like WWE, they can always leave WWE, build their name up, and go to AEW, go elsewhere, right? I think for the collegiate athletes, the con is that some of these people might get hurt, and then they no longer love professional wrestling, and they don't want to do it. And we've seen this a couple times, and I'm very critical of that. So there are cons to signing indie talent and collegiate talent, but the pro is that you could literally be creating your next star. Some of you may not know who Starboy Charlie is, but if you've ever watched him, you know he's charismatic. You know that is something that will typically work in NXT. When you see Nora Phoenix Diana, you might not know exactly who she is, but people who watch indie wrestling do. And if WWE wants to utilize her and train her the right way, they have that ability to make her into something bigger. The point is, WWE is still in control, and that's the most important aspect to all of this here. So I think WWE having this tryout is a great thing. I like that we're seeing a mix of everybody. You got to have that diversity when you're recruiting talent. I think it is very, very bad to just go after indie talent or as well as just collegiate wrestlers or collegiate athletes. Like, you have to have a mix, and you got to figure it out. You know, Braun Breaker was a football player. He didn't have a wrestling background. But that's okay. They figured it out. Carmelo Hayes was Christian Casanova. Came to WWE, really found himself in WWE. Now he's the United States champion. So there's benefits to getting indie wrestlers, and there's benefits to getting collegiate athletes. And we've seen that proof over and over again. So ultimately, I'm excited about this. I think this is wonderful. I'm happy to see what WWE does next. Good luck to everybody in the tryouts. I can't wait to see what WWE does. One thing I will say, too, is if you were watching NXT last night, many fans noticed when Izzy Dame was cutting her promo, Nora Phoenix Diana was actually in the crowd. So some of those people trying out were actually watching NXT as well, which was really cool. And I think that's a very good idea for WWE to do that for potential recruits. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for watching The Angle Show. I'll see you next time.